Are you trying to navigate this crazy thing called life? Well, you're in the right place. Welcome to Unraveling with Rayne. Hello, beautiful people. Oh, happy Wednesday. Middle of the week. How are we doing? Hopefully well. I'm gonna get myself situated here. My battery died on my keyboard last minute, so that was kind of a bummer. But anyway, so if you are just joining, we will be talking about labels and mental illness tonight. It sounds really scary, but it's not so bad, I promise. So yeah, labels and mental illness. And I know that I talk about mental illness a lot, but it's kind of like my thing. Like, it's something I'm really passionate about. So feel free to take some time and grab yourself a beverage, maybe something warm. I've got tea. I've got chamomile tea, which probably wasn't a good choice because it makes me sleepy, but it is evening, and here we are, and it's the time to wind down. So, let me share. Okay. So, I made myself some notes so I don't get off track, because I have a tendency to do that, and I'm sorry if it irritates you that there's a glare on my glasses. It irritates me, but what do you do? Hi, Benjamin. Who else is here? Dara. Where's my husband from the other room? Because he didn't want to sit in front of the camera with me. Because he wanted to eat his food in peace, I guess, and not in front of you. Which I don't blame him. Let's see. I'm gonna pull up on my phone so I can read comments better. Okay, so if you're just now joining us,
I'll say hi though. Hi.
See, there he is. We're talking about labels and mental illness tonight. Get comfy. Here we go. And as we go, if you have anything to add, feel free to post in the comments, or if you really want to discuss something with me, I can bring you on the video chat, and I would love to do that. Love, love, love. All right, a couple more minutes here, and then we'll get going. Do you guys see my crazy tan line? You see that? I need to wear my hair back when I'm out in the sun or something. Which is weird because I wear a hat a lot, so I don't know. Let's see. Facebook is giving me a weird. Okay, so I am going to start off by reading the the definition, the Webster Dictionary definition of mental illness, and it is the longest, most redundant sentence, and I think only dictionaries get away with writing such a long sentence. I don't know. But anyway, so here it is. So mental illness, any of a broad range of mental conditions such as major depression, schizophrenia, obsessive compulsive disorder, panic disorder, that are marked primarily by sufficient disorganization of personality, mind, or emotions to impair normal psychological functioning in causes marked by disease or disability, and that are typically associated with a disruption in normal thinking, feeling, mood, behavior, interpersonal interactions, or daily functions. So basically, it's any type of thought, emotion, mood that disrupts your everyday life. So if it inhibits you, and then that could be in all ways, work, personal life, whatever. So just like that really long sentence told us. So, and this was an interesting thing, I didn't realize this, but the first time the phrase mental illness was used was in 1724. So we've been talking about mental illness for a while now. So there's lots of different types, just like in the definition shared with us, but there are so many more. There's obviously anxiety, bipolar, borderline personality disorder. So we've taken a lot of time to really chunk out mental illness. We've given it lots of different names with lots of different effects. And so I think that this topic has really been on my mind a lot because I have suffered with mental illness, with anxiety and post-traumatic stress disorder. And I have learned a lot about the process and what that means in my brain and how to go about not just managing it, because that's what it was at first, is just kind of like managing it so that way it didn't inhibit me as much, but also healing that, which is something that I'm really diving into now, and I'm gonna have a ton of things to share in regards to how I have healed in my mental illness. And where was I going? Oh, the types and the way that we break it down and how we communicate about mental illness. And there's a lot of words that are thrown in there, and that's the thing about words that I found in general, especially like trying to write and being a writer and communicating with people that way. Words sometimes are really, really clunky, so they can be helpful in helping us understand each other to a certain extent and really communicating our needs and all that. But sometimes we get too caught up with words and defining things and really putting them in a box, which I think is why I think this is why this is bothering me lately. So I hear advertisements for certain like therapy and medications and stuff to help with like all the different listed mental issues that we just talked about. And I think that by breaking them apart, and you guys can give me your input on this and what you think and how you feel about it, but by breaking them apart the way that we do, it's beneficial because it helps us first and foremost recognize symptoms, and each one has its own, set of typical symptoms. So it helps us categorize and help people better because they can give us the list of things that are going wrong, and we can like, oh, well, this kind of sounds like this and that and all that. And it also helps diagnostic helps on the diagnostic end, but it also helps on the patient end because you have this need to be able to define whatever it is to help heal it. And sometimes we can get pretty close, and sometimes we have it right, nailed it right on the head as far as what it is. And that's not just mental illnesses, but physical illnesses also. But as far as the patient side of exploring mental illness and how to seek help and how to treat, you have this reassurance that, oh, this is something that people know about and they've done studies on, and they kind of have some sort of notion on how to help me with this problem. So having a title and a label for a certain mental illness is helpful in that way. So it reassures the patient, it makes them feel heard and like they are being understood and that there is a road to recovery for them. So I do appreciate those things about mental illness labels. However, what I have observed, and I even got hung up in this during my own process of figuring out like what is wrong with me, like why can't I function appropriately, like I need to figure this out. When I was given a diagnosis of anxiety, which I already knew that before I started to seek help, but when I was given a diagnosis of PTSD, like it did bring on all of those positive aspects of being the patient at first. So I felt like I finally had something to learn more about and to educate myself on and read about how other people handled it and what worked best for them. So that part was great. But at some point, and some people may not experience this part of it, some people might, but for me personally, at one point, I really let that label like hinder my healing process because I found myself stuck in oh, I just need to handle this. I just need to know my scripts that I need to tell myself to be able to work around the situation and so that I can function. And so I leaned into that a lot. I let that box of what my mental illness was really define how I was living my life and how I was going about managing PTSD symptoms and anxiety. So that's one thing that I hope to influence a little bit in our conversations moving forward in general around mental illness is recognizing when the label of our mental illness is helpful and when it is no longer helpful. And we we see the signs that it's no longer helpful when it starts to hold us back and we're no longer progressing in the healing process rather than just the managing process. So if you guys have any thoughts on that, I'd love to hear them. And if you have any experience with that, that'd be great input. And then also, when we talk about mental illness in the medical community, one thing that I see a lot once somebody has their quote diagnosis or their mental illness has been labeled, they run the risk of being just another number in the system. So you have seen a doctor, they diagnose you with, let's just use PTSD, and now they're going to prescribe medication for this and this and that and, whatever. So once that's been done, if there is no guidance towards healing, and sometimes people really like talk therapy, some people choose other forms of therapy, some people use more energy healing, however you go about healing. If you're not being prompted to do that, and you're just now another number in the system, and this is how the doctors are treating your symptoms, and we're working on more of a masking than a healing, that's not where we want to be. And it makes me really sad when that happens, and I see that happen, and it happens outside of mental illness. But again, this is just another way that we could potentially become a number in the system. And my hope about trying to change the way that we communicate about mental health and how we heal, that we can get as many people off that conveyor belt of masking symptoms and, well, this is how we've been treating you for, X amount of years, and we're just going to keep doing that because, whatever. And it's not actually healing, it's just masking. If it's healing, great. Keep healing, keep doing that. But if it's just masking your symptoms and really taking away your ability to embrace and enjoy life, that's not good. I don't feel like that's the best way to live. But all I have are these words, these clunky words, and the ability to hopefully start some conversations and to slow people down and to really help them contemplate how we view mental illness and how we talk about it and ways that we can treat it, and understanding that we really know very little about the human mind and even the body. And so we really shouldn't cut ourselves off from all the options and really give things a solid look before we pass. And a lot of that starts with us. That starts with us evaluating ourselves and taking stock of where we are mentally and really using that to make decisions and just, relax a little bit, breathe, take some time for you, evaluate life, and then we can all go out into the world and hopefully make more sound decisions and embrace each other, knowing that we're all in this together and we all have to do this together. So, this is interesting, and this is not in my flow. I've lost my flow because I stopped looking at my notes. But anyway, this is interesting. So the other day, the kids and I watched this documentary on Netflix called The First Face of America. And it was so cool because they talked about Kennewick Man, which my kids were like, "What? Did they say Kennewick?" And I'm like, "Yeah, like they found this guy, this old skeleton. He was like 11,000 years old, right?" And so that was really cool. They enjoyed that. But anyway, in a cave in Mexico, they found another skeleton that was 13,000 years old, making it the oldest recovered skeleton from the Americas, which is crazy. So it was a female, and she was about 16 years old, they think. And what was interesting to me, so this is where this kind of ties in with our mental illness and our mental health discussion. What was interesting to me is as they were evaluating these skeletons, these ones from like 11 to 13,000-year-old skeletons, they were looking at the wounds on the people. And they said that people were very violent with each other, like in general, people getting speared and stabbed and whatever. But they said what was most interesting about the female skeletons is that a lot of their injuries were congruent with what we typically see today as like domestic violence type injuries, which, stay with me, it's still mental health, I promise, which really spurred some thinking on the human psyche because, in my way of thinking, there are two reasons why we experience a mental illness. And, well, two main reasons in my mind. And that is trauma or some sort of physical imbalance in our brain. Like, that makes sense to me. And if you guys have other thoughts, that'd be great to hear. Because I think about it a lot. Like, what is it that makes us sick, like mentally sick? And so when I boil it down, I would say trauma or some sort of physical imbalance or malformation of the brain. And so I was thinking about this 13,000-year-old skeleton, this 16-year-old girl who was showing all the typical injuries that you would see in domestic violence today. And it sat with me, like it made me so sad because as women and men too, men are abused also. But statistically, it is higher in women, and it just shows how long that has been in our history and our genetics, that physical trauma. And of course, the men experience it too. I mean, they were fighting each other for food or whatever, land, mates. So we've been very aggressive with each other. But there's just something interesting to me about the whole like male female dynamic, because I think about how our behaviors from our parents, we observe them and we take on some of their traumas and some of their habits based on the trauma that they've experienced or that they then have turned on, whether knowingly or not, caused to the next generation. And the next generation repeats it, and how few of us actually take the time to look at ourselves to kind of break that continuation and that pattern. And I mean, 13,000 years ago, this was happening to women. So that is a really long chain of trauma, of generational trauma to break. So I think that we should all kind of just be able to sit back and give ourselves a break, knowing that we are doing like all we can. And it's been a long time that we've experienced this. Let's see. I got a comment from Alex. This is very relevant in my life right now. I'm dealing with some of my past trauma. So I can, right on. It's so hard. It's hard to look at ourselves and to end the cycle. I'm so proud of you. That's awesome. Yeah, so that's what's on my brain tonight. And I hope to continue to have many more conversations and keep working how we talk about mental illness and how we label it, and making it to where we can lead more and more people towards healing rather than dealing. Do you like that? I was on the fly too. That was pretty good. It's pretty good. Anyway, so I hope that you guys have a great night. And if you have any comments or anything you'd like to leave after this has ended, please do. And if you want to reach out and chat or whatever, I'm here. And yeah, I guess we'll chat soon. Ta-ta, everybody.
Thank you all so much for listening. If you would like to help support Unraveling with Rayne, go to patreon.com/unravelingwithrayne. When you become a patron, you receive bonus content such as behind-the-scenes footage, along with other special content that you won't be able to find anywhere else. Music for Unraveling with Rayne was provided by Barefoot Randy.